The topic is what we do on Leil Rosh Hashanah. We come home at night after Ma'ariv and we eat a Seudah. The minhag is to make a motzi, and then we have the simonim. We have rubia, we have pomegranate, all these things indicate a certain particular characteristic. Now you have to understand that these fruits or vegetables, whatever you want to call them, they don't have a negativity. There's no negativity in saying a fruit of any kind or a vegetable of some kind. It itself is something which is part of it. It all depends what you do with it. If you use it to give energy to somebody who needs energy for good reasons, then it's something positive. If you use it for something that's bad, then it's negative. So the actual fruits or the vegetables themselves are in between. They're neither good nor bad. It all depends on what you do with them. So there's a minhag, Leil Rosh Hashanah, you come home, you make a motzi, and then you start to eat these fruits, and you make a little tefillah with each particular fruit. And that tefillah directs the fruit in a certain direction, or the vegetable in a certain direction. So let's think for a moment about what this is. We're starting off the meal with tefillah. That's a very interesting thing in and of itself. The first meal of the year has an influence on all the meals of the year. It has a certain character about it. We start eating the meal, and as soon as we make a motzi, we have now all these fruits or vegetables with a little prayer attached to each one. Why is that at the beginning of the meal? The answer is because our meal that we eat is not supposed to be a meal of indulgence. Just enjoying ourselves because if it's a yontif and we have now to eat so we can enjoy it, simchas yontif. No. It's much more than that. We're starting off the meal with directives before we actually get into the courses themselves. We're giving everything direction. And this is very important that we should know the entire year when we eat, our eating has to have direction, it has to have a purpose. It's not just to satisfy our appetite. Eating must have a purpose and it should be used positively. And therefore these particular fruits or vegetables are used, each one with an association of some kind, and we're using it as in a positive association. If it's pomegranate, we should have many mitzvahs to do, like the pomegranate has many mitzvahs, many seeds. If it's an apple, we should have a shana tova mesukah. If like the apple is sweet, we should have a sweet year. We're taking the association of the fruit and applying it to our lives. Now there are certain apples which are called sour apples. Don't eat the sour apple. You don't want to start off the year sour on Leil Rosh Hashanah. Make sure you don't eat sour apples.
Green apples are sour.
Green, okay, don't eat sour apples. If you eat a sour apple, it's not a good sign. Start off with a sweet apple, the red ones, the sweet apples, the delicious apples. Start off with them, so you start off the year with a sweet sign, a sweet... Yeah?
Yes.
Severe.
Is it stronger?
It's strong, yes. Yes.
All right. You'll feel it. Eventually it'll get to you. Don't worry. You'll feel it. All right. So we have to use this introduction to this is the first meal of the year. Remember, Rabbi saying, this is the first meal of the year. Whatever you do, the first of something has an influence on the rest that follows. So what you make of the first meal of the year will have a marked influence on all of the meals, and certainly the meals of Rosh Hashanah for the following. You have at least 4 meals on Rosh Hashanah, night and by day, And then the second day, Rosh Hashanah, another again, night and by day. But the way you start off the meal, the Leil Rosh Hashanah, is supposed to be a siman for the entire year, and certainly for Rosh Hashanah itself. In other words, what you're saying is you want the meal, the food of Rosh Hashanah, to be a purposeful eating, not just to fill up the belly and to satisfy the palate. It should have purpose. And therefore you start off with let's say with an apple. The meaning is to say what? You want to have a Shana Tova Masuka. You want to have a good and a sweet year. So I eat an apple, and I'm taking, now the apple itself does not say in it, good and sweet year. But you're taking the character of the apple, and with your mind and with your statement, you are giving it direction. You're giving it purpose. And the way you think about it, that's exactly what it's going to do. You're taking something which is parav and neutral, and you are giving it direction. So it's very important, all the things that we're doing on Leil Rosh Hashanah, at the meal, the beginning of the meal, give them an influence. When you eat that afterwards, that tefillah that you attached to that particular food goes into you and has that influence. So it's very important to do that. And
you dip it in honey.
Okay, put it in honey, whatever he eats, all the foods that they all have some kind of a symbol. And remember, it's not the food itself. It's the tefillah that you attach, which is important. And let me ask you a question. Let's say you don't have the particular fruit or the particular vegetable or whatever it is that you have. Can you make that little bakasha anyway? Of course you can. If I don't have the apple with the honey, I'll say, why not? Why not? The apple is only a medium, that's all. It is only something solid that can grasp, and you internalize it by eating it, and you're putting it into you, it becomes part of you. But the tefillah, the bakasha, you certainly can make even if you don't have the apple. And you should do it. And it's interesting, that's the way you start off the meal. You don't leave it at the end of the meal. First I'm going to fill up my belly and be satisfied and full and all the gashmis. At the end, I'll do you a favor also. I'll think about my neshama too a little bit. No. That's not the way you start the meal on Rosh Hashanah. That's the first meal of the year. That's not the way to start the meal. The first meal of the year, we start off Leil Rosh Hashanah thinking about the neshama first. The guf is secondary. So right after your meal is started, you make the motzi, then you take the simanim, and you make a bakasha, a tefillah. That is a siman of the way it's supposed to go all year long. And you know something? There are some people, I've seen, there's a big rav in where is he? Central Eretz Yisrael someplace. And he put out a sheet of all kinds of ideas for Yom Noraim. He said a very interesting thing. Everyone says Shir HaMalos on Shabbos and Yom Tov before Birchas Hamazon, and if you do it during the week, Al Naras Bovel during the week. Why is it left for the end of the meal? When you get to the end of the meal, you're so full, you have so many things that go in your mind. You just do it like that's the minute you do it. It doesn't have too much clout. It doesn't have too much meaning. It's like an introduction to Birchas Hamazon, but it doesn't really have any. When should you do it? There's no halacha that says you have to do it at the end. You should start off the meal with that. Why at the end of the meal? Why do I have to say? Because the mazon, yes, that is the end. That has to be at the end. But the tefillah, you want to make a tefillah, you have to leave it at the end after you're full and you really can't think anymore. You just want to get it over with. That's not the time to make a tefillah. The tefillah should be at the beginning of the meal. I want to give this meal direction. Not the meal is just to fill up my belly, and then afterwards I'll do you a favor and I'll make a little bakasha too. No. You make the bakasha before you start, like we do Leil Rosh Hashanah. That's what we're doing, Leil Rosh Hashanah. Before we start eating all the courses, right away we have the Yehi Ratzon with all of these simanim. That should be an example for the way we conduct ourselves the entire year. In other words, we have to have a proper mindset when we start to eat. Not that I'm just eating to satisfy my animalistic desires. I'm eating because it's a part of my avodas Hashem. This is a part of the way I worship Hashem, and the eating has to have a strengthening of my avodas Hashem. Not that I'm going to eating and the avodas Hashem comes afterwards. It's secondary or third. It's not important. It's only, I'll leave it to the end. No. That's not the way we eat. That's the way a Jew eats. A Jew eats, the eating itself has to have direction. It has to have purpose. And therefore, at the beginning of the meal, we do it on Rosh Hashanah. Why shouldn't it be a simon for the whole year too? Before we start to eat, we make a motzi to make sure the meal is started off fine. And then we should have a bakasha that I want this meal to give me koach, to be Oved Hashem, to be able to do this mitzvah, to do that mitzvah. Why shouldn't we do it all year long? Why dafka only Rosh Hashanah? It's a very good thing to remember. Just like we start off the year that way, there's no reason why Shir Hamalos and Al Naras Bavel should be said at the end of the meal. It should be said right after the motzi, if you ate a kazayas, before you start eating. So the whole meal has a completely different flavor. Completely different flavor. It's a meal of a much higher spiritual level. Otherwise it's animalistic, it's very gashmi. At the end you do a favor, keep the minhag. The minhag is, like I say, Al Naras Bavel, or Shir Hamalos, okay, it's at the end. And you sing it, you don't even think what it says in Shir Hamalos. So therefore, it should be done at the beginning of the meal, before you get into the Gashmiya, so that your mind is still clear, and you understand what you're saying, that the whole meal now takes on another level. It's a different meal altogether. So that's very important to remember that, Leil Rosh Hashanah. The meal is secondary to the simanim. The simanim are first, and then starts the meal. And then if you have all those things in mind, all those little tefillas in mind, what you said, at the simanim, the meal is a different meal altogether. And that's the way the Rosh Hashanah meal should be. It should be a different meal. The way you start off the year influences the entire year. Okay, so that's that point. Now, we have a very, very important point. We have to mention, and I have it in the Sefer here. The Sefer is called Sifsei Chaim, and it was written by a big Talmud Chacham who happens to be a Satmar Chassid. He was Niftu already, but he was a tremendous Talmud Chacham. Aside from that, he is a Satmar Chassid, tremendous Talmud Chacham, and he's a Chassid, and in Chabad is also Chassidus. So I'm sure there's a kesher between what he writes and what goes on in the world. And I think if you listen to today's shir and you do what he says, you'll really have a big plus in the way the year starts. A big plus. Okay, the following is, this is what we're saying now. When we do all these simanim, whether it's the apple, whether it's the
Rosh.
pomegranate, the head, the Rosh Hashanah, all these things, they themselves are very neutral. There's no tefillah attached to them. They're not positive, they're not negative. Neither one of them. We give them a positive charge by saying, because it'd be a good simon for this and for that, for this. And that's very important. We have to remember, many things in the world are that way. They are very, very neutral, and what we do with them changes their character to positive or negative. So we're taking food, which is parav, it's not neither negative or positive, and we're giving it a positive charge. We want to give it a positive influence by making a little tefillah on the food, and then that food, we internalize it, we eat it. So that a positive charge goes into us, becomes a part of us. So that's the way we should start off the year. That's very important. You make a little tefillah with each little food, and the tefillah is more important than the food itself. The food is only a kli to hold the tefillah and to give you an ability to internalize it physically. But the main thing is, of course, is the bakasha itself that goes along with it. Okay. Now, the main point that we want to make this morning is the following. We have a day of judgment, Rosh Hashanah. It's finished on Yom Kippur. And we all want to have a positive outcome. Ma'avir Nasror and Hagzera, we want to have L'chaim Tovim L'shalom. We have a pasuk in Tehillim, which we say in davening daily. Baruch HaGever Asher Yiftach Hashem. Blessed is the person who has bitachon in Hashem. You have trust in Hashem. What is the result of your trust? V'haya Hashem iftacha. Because you trusted in Him, you have faith in Him, He will fulfill what you trusted Him to do. Because you were reliant on Him. Now this is very important for the meal as well. Very important. I'm going to read to you from the text that he brings here in the following. Iker hatab. That we have all of these indicators at the beginning of the meal, all of these sweet things, these meaningful things at the beginning of the meal. Iker hatam hu lechazek es levavo bebitachon chazak b'Hashem. It is all to give us a lot of faith, strong faith in Hashem, al yedei asiyas simana tova, by making a good strong siman, b'kdei lechazek levavo b'bitachon b'Hashem yisbarach. I am indicating, I am showing, by using this siman in the beginning of the meal that we just talked about, right? The apple with the head, the roast was the zanav, all these things. I am indicating, I'm showing, by making the statement that I have bitachon in Hashem, that this is the way it's going to work out. Shebavada yilo shana taiva beli safek klal klal. I am eating these foods, internalizing them with the tefillah that I said on them, making it part of me, with complete faith and reliance that that is exactly what's going to happen. The faith that I had in Hashem, there's going to be a Shana Tova Mesuka, like we say on the apple, that's exactly what's going to happen, and I'm internalizing that. He says, Kamosha Masina Beneviyim, Shetzila Hashem is Baruch Lasos Eze Pulos Maisios. The Nevi'im very often were told before they, when they gave their prophecy, they were told to do some kind of a deed. I remember one of the cases was, I don't remember which Navi it was, he was forecasting a victory over another nation in a war, and he was told by Hashem, or he did it on himself, he picked up a stone and threw it in that direction. That's all he did. He took a stone and threw it in that direction. That gave it sort of a base on which it can take place. It has already a source on which it can be built. So we do a maisa, and the maisa is indicative of a certain wish that you have, and once you put it into history, you put it into life, by activating it, then it can take place much, much easier. So if we're doing this at the beginning of the meal, we're eating something, and we're giving it already a name, we're giving it already a character, we're giving it already a prophecy, and when we're internalizing that, this is a siman exactly that is what's going to happen. But it requires complete faith. And it implies an honest and sincere tshuva. Hashem knows exactly what we have in our minds, or exactly what we have deep down in us. You cannot fool Hashem. There are people who go through the entire Rosh Hashanah with basically its lip service. But inside them, it's just another Rosh Hashanah where they have a chance to sing in shul, and that's it. The nice Rosh Hashanah nigunim that they sing, Yom Noraim, but it doesn't change them at all. Right after the davening, they're the same person they were. No change whatsoever. So there's got to be, of course, a sincere and an honest desire to improve oneself. But if you do these maisim with that true desire to improve, which is called tshuva, then we have every reason to believe that these simanim will actually become actualized in true life. So the Hiratzon expresses what we want to happen, and by eating it and actually having that bitachon, that trust that it's going to happen, that's exactly what will happen. Now he says, we have to understand one thing. Ki bitachon ha'adam, a person's faith, totally kol haksiva shel Rosh Hashanah. You hear this Rabbi said in the statement? A person's faith is extremely, extremely influential in the entire inscription on Rosh Hashanah. Your faith in Hashem. As the Maggid Mizrich, the Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, he revealed this, his Galus Nora. This is a tremendous revelation. I want to tell you something who we're talking about, the Maggid Mizrich. Now listen, this is very interesting. The Maggid Mizrich was a Lithuanian rabbi, big Talmud Chacham, and he was a big posek. He learned Kabbalah too, but he wasn't at all a chassid. But he had heard many times about the Baal Shem Tov, and he decided, time for a visit. One Talmud Chacham to go to visit another Rav. Why not? So he comes to the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov says to him, all right, Nigla, you know Shas, you're a posek, you're a rabbi, okay, fine. What do you know about Nister? What do you know about Chachmas HaKabbalah? So he says, well, whatever you know. So he opens up the Eitz Chaim from Rabbi Chaim Vital. He says, here, read a piece and tell me pshat, tell me. So he took it, and he read it, and he said to him what he thinks it means. Baal Shem Tov says, very good. He says, now give it to me. I'll show you how I learned it. Baal Shem Tov started to learn it, and as it's written, it's described, when the Baal Shem Tov learned it, the Mizrich Maggid felt the entire room became filled with fire. These were the Malachim who had come down to the learning of the Baal Shem Tov of the same piece that the Mizrich Maggid learned. The Baal Shem Tov learned it, and it was a different quality altogether. From that point on, the Maggid said, I'm not leaving the Baal Shem Tov. I knew it, and I see how he learned it. It's two worlds, two different worlds. So he was a Litvish rabbi, a posek, who became the next teacher of Chabad, or even before Chabad, of Hasidus, after the Baal Shem Tov. He inherited the Baal Shem Tov's position after the Baal Shem Tov was Nifta. He was the second one, Mizrich Maggid. And he says the following, and this is considered to be a really, really awesome revelation. He said the following, Ha'olam Toyin, people make a big mistake. V'choshvim sha'mishpat b'Rosh Hashanah u'b'shamayim. You're being judged by the heavenly court. Everyone thinks that. Kifi psakam shel habeis din shel mala. With the beis din up there paskins for you, that's what's going to be. He says, this Litvish rabbi, a rabbi who is a posek, and he became the next Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, the biggest Talmud of Baal Shem Tov. He says, Lo Kenhu. It's a mistake. It's a mistake. The Beis Din Shel Marla is not the place that paskins what's going to be with you. Rak haksiva v'hachasima shel Rosh Hashanah nase kan lemata. B'olam hazeh, where? B'machshavto shel ha'adam. That's amazing. You hear that, Rabbi said what he said? You are determining your future by your machshavos on Rosh Hashanah. You hear that? You are determining your future by your machshavos Rosh Hashanah. Kan lemata b'olam hazeh b'machshavto shel ha'adam. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And this is not some chassid who's a fly-by-nighter, who doesn't know what he's talking about. He was a Rav beforehand, he was a Paisik beforehand, he was a Talmud Chacham beforehand, and he became the Talmud of the Baal Shem Tov, and he is making the statement. It comes from a top authority, a very well-informed authority, an educated authority. We ourselves determine what our psak is going to be the next year by our thoughts and our feelings on Rosh Hashanah. This is so important. You have a mitzvah rabbah to spread this to all your friends, your family. Tell them this. Tell them this. They themselves will determine what the next year is going to be like. They themselves have this power. Ki harosha, a person who is not in the fold at all, bezichru avonosav, he thinks about his averis. What kind of Russia is thinking about his averis? You know what kind of a Russia he's talking about? He's talking about a Russia who's a religious Jew, and he has all kinds of taivas that he gives into, and I'm still Shemesh Shabbos. I have my taivas, so nishkaferlach. And he has no control. He doesn't even make an effort to control his desires. So I won't wait 6 hours, I'll wait 2 hours. Right now, it looks like a good piece of cheesecake. I want to have a piece of cheesecake. So what if I had 2 hours ago, I had meat? I want to have cheesecake now. Can't control himself. Doesn't feel it's so important. 2 hours is enough. So this is the kind of Russia we're talking about. I'm not talking about a person who's a complete, denier of everything. The person who believes, but he's got problems. His way he was brought up, the way he was taught, the examples that he saw in his life, they made him to be a very, very light, let's call it light Jew. He's not really into it. He lives by habit. Ein liba b'rshuso. He's not in control of his emotions. Such a person, Nebuch, nichtav li'alta. He gets his psak right away on Rosh Hashanah. For him, they don't have to wait till Yom Kippur. He gets his psak right away on Rosh Hashanah. The tzaddikim and the rishoyim get pasuk. Only the beinim wait for Yom Kippur. The tzaddikim and the rishoyim get a psak right away. And how does he know where he's holding? He says, Siman the davar. What are his machshavos in the middle of Shemona Esrei? What's he thinking about? Is he thinking about the words? Or is he thinking about all kinds of things fly into his mind? It's not serious by him at all. That's the sin. Then he knows where he is. If those things are going on in Shemona Esrei on Rosh Hashanah, then he knows where he is. He's a big rachmanis. Now the tzaddikim, what does it mean, the tzaddikim? That's this kind of person. What about the tzaddikim? They also have problems. They're not perfect. Even a tzaddik who's called a tzaddik is not perfect. So they're also worried about their imperfections. Now you have to understand something. A person who's a tzaddik, b'derech klal, he's a good person. He learns Torah, he davens well, he gives tzedakah, he's kind, so on and so forth. He has imperfections too. And you know something? Because he's a tzaddik, Hashem will take those imperfections and highlight them. You are so good, these imperfections that you have stand out, and they attract attention. So that's a problem. So he says, they're worried about those small imperfections that they have, the mistakes that they made. They're worried about that because it stands out. They have a very, very white sheet, but on the white sheet there are black stains, small black stains, which don't look good at all, and they stand out. They're worried about those black stains. So he says, what is the tzaddik going to do when he has those stains? He knows he made mistakes. Generally he's okay, but he makes mistakes. So listen to this, it's so beautiful. Im kol zeh, heim botchim b'yeshu'aso, they have bitachon in Hashem, v'chazdo, and Hashem's kindness, u'mischazkim l'shuv el Hashem, and they have a strengthening, an inner strengthening. I'm going to be better next year. I'm going to make tikkunim. I'm going to come closer to Hashem. And they're mispalel b'simcha. You hear that, Rabbi say? Not they're crying, they're mispalel b'simcha. Because of their faith in Hashem, their bitachon in Hashem. And therefore, Hashem is not going to disappoint them. Baruch hagever asher yiftach b'Hashem, Hashem yiftacho. According to the level of faith and trust that you would have in Hashem, Hashem will not disappoint you. And if you're sincere and you're honest and you really mean you're going to be better from now on, Hashem sees deeply inside you. That's enough for Hashem. And therefore He can be meichel on your imperfections. Therefore you have to have simcha and tikva bitachon l'chein heima nechtavim le'alto l'chayim v'chokem v'achshavtam haksiv l'toylai. And this is going to be inscribed in your mind also, and therefore you should be b'simcha. You hear this, Rabbi say? People on Rosh Hashanah, some of them are trembling. Who knows what's going to be? The books of life and death are open. What's going to be my psak for the next year? He's giving you a formula for success. A formula for success. Do a emes tshuva. Really take yourself in hand. I'm going to take my imperfections and work on them and eradicate them and be a better person. And I have complete faith that Hashem knows that. And therefore I am besimcha. Because I have absolutely no doubt that Hashem will accept it and give me a psak l'chaim tov v'rasham. And therefore, on Rosh Hashanah, there's every reason, as at the same time that you're also trembling, at the same time to be b'simcha.
Rabbi, excuse me, we had the same issue with Rambam this morning. It's a wishful thinking.
No, it's more than wishful thinking.
No, it's different.
It's more than wishful thinking. More than wishful thinking. It's with Ruach HaKodesh. It's a vadai. It's a vadai. David HaMelech said, Ruach HaKodesh in Tilim, Baruch HaGev HaShiftach Hashem, V'hoya Hashem Biftacho. If you have bitachon, someone relies on Hashem, Hashem will take yourself for example. Take yourself for example. You are the head of an organization, you're the head of a family, whatever it is, a business, you're the head. And you have all the people who are underneath you, and they say, come to you and they say, we have complete trust and faith in you that you are going to be the best leader that there could be. And everything's going to work out well. We are all behind you. We have complete trust and faith in you. What's that going to do to you? That's going to give you inner strength to make their hope comes true. The exact hope that they had in you, you're going to do everything to fulfill their expectations. You don't want to disappoint them. That's why you are a normal person, a human being. What about Hashem? Hashem, Allah has kama v'kama.
Yes, but there is no assurance. There is no assurance, insurance that it will happen that way. They can have trust in you, and you might be wrong. No. They can't be wrong. You can't be wrong. Don't forget, we're talking about a person who is really sincere and he's doing tshuva. Yeah, absolutely.
A person who is really sincere and he's doing tshuva, he has every reason to believe Hashem sees deeply into his heart. He's really an empathetic person. Then Hashem will fulfill his bitachon that he had in him, and then everything will work out. Hay Hashem iftacha, and therefore you should be simple.
Yeah, history has shown us
Yes.
that between tzaddikim and tzaddikim, who have suffered and have died young, whatever way. How does one come to terms with that?
There are always exceptions to a rule. Always exceptions to a rule. But that's the rule. You have to go along with the rule, not to be concerned about exceptions. No, we're not talking, look, you had a World War II, you had a Holocaust. Of course. But that's already more of a national thing. We're talking about now the personal. For each individual person, for himself, this is the way to go into Rosh Hashanah. This is very, very important. Very important. It changes the entire mood. Of course, it requires sincerity. You cannot fool Hashem. But if you're doing a good job, you're taking your Elul, you're preparing properly in Elul for the big day on Rosh Hashanah. And I'm going to tell you something. Which is more important, Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur? Everyone will say, well, Yom Kippur, that's the last chance.
Probably Rosh Hashanah.
Of course Rosh Hashanah is more important.
That's whatever's happened on Rosh Hashanah.
If what happened on Rosh Hashanah most probably will stick. And you have tremendous chuyot that it can change during a certain tshuva. But you have to assume that what the Pesach on Rosh Hashanah is, that's the one that's going to stick. So therefore you have to put all your efforts into Rosh Hashanah. Not to wait till Yom Kippur. All your efforts have to go into Rosh Hashanah, and of course the build up until Rosh Hashanah, which is now, during this period. So this is an extremely, extremely powerful piece from the Maggid Midrash. He says further, Gam tzrichim, and there's no reason why a person, the only reason a person should worry, why? Because if he's not really sincere. If he's not sincere, then he has reason to worry. But if he is sincere, there's nothing better than that. Hashem is Hashem emes. If you're emes, and Hashem is emes, and you're sincere, you have every reason to believe that Hashem will give you a good psak on Rosh Hashanah. Yes, well, question.
What's the difference between, I guess, Chassidut and Rambam?
Between what and what?
Chassidut and Rambam is, Rambam says you're never going to do it again, and you have to know you're never going to do it again. He used the word that you're working on it. That you're working on it.
Hey, I don't know if you can be so, precise in the exact language. The Rambam was the biggest chassid. There was no chassidus at the time of the Rambam. He was the biggest chassid.
But maybe this is not sufficient. This is not sufficient, what he said. Because Ba'asher Musham, in that moment, I am completely sincere. I made a complete teshuvah.
That's good.
I am perfect.
That's good.
One day later...
What happens later, that's not, you're not the Navi, what's going to be later.
Exactly.
Right now, as you say, I'm really sincere right now, I do my best right now, and I really mean it. That's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
It's not an insurance that it's going to be that way.
That's not your affair to think about it. You don't have to think about that.
Okay.
You have to think, yeah. Question?
Okay, but if you have a gambling addiction, just to use it again, you can say, I'm never going to do it again, even though you know.
What do you mean you know? Then you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Then you don't know.
No, the proof is when you get to the table, but you're going to do it again.
That will, when the test comes, then you'll know how sincere your commitment was. But
the Gemara said that up to the day of your death, you can fall again.
it's possible. It's possible. Sure, it's possible. But you have to do everything within your power to be 100% sincere and make a commitment.
But then, what does it mean? Bet din shel mala. It's not the bet din. At the end, it is the bet din shel mala.
But you have the power to influence that psak. Whatever you paskin for yourself down here, they'll accept that also.
Daily.
They'll accept that also, correct.
Daily.
On a daily basis also, but especially you're worried about Rosh Hashanah, because that's for the whole year. And he says, look, listen to the words of the Maggid Midrash. צריכים להשתדל מאוד שלא להתפלל ביום הקודש הזה בעיצבון חס ושלום. You hear that?
בעיצבון.
You have to be very careful on Rosh Hashanah not to daven with sadness. Not to be sad. The way you start off the year influences the whole year. It's so important to be besimcha on Rosh Hashanah, even though it's a day of tshuva. But if you are really sincere in your tshuva, there's no reason why you shouldn't be besimcha. That itself should give you a simcha. Now, what does simcha mean? You have to understand. People misunderstand what simcha is. Simcha doesn't mean that you have a big belly laugh and you have a big smile on your face. No. The true definition of simcha is inner content. That's what simcha is. True simcha is inner content. You're totally inner content and at peace. That's what simcha is. So he says further, the Maggid says, Hagam shebakol hashana oshles palal b'itzavon, even all year long. A person, when he's davening, he shouldn't be sad. Why shouldn't you be sad when you're davening all year long? You know why? Because you are talking to Hashem. You're at such a high level. How can you be sad at such a time? The experience of being able to converse with Hashem, that is an exhilarating experience. That is an experience which gives you a high. How can you be sad at such a time? If you're sad at such a time that you don't realize where you are, you don't realize that you are communicating with Hashem on the highest levels. And it's also during the year also to be be'itzavon, to be sad when you're davening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shmoneh Esrei. That's all year long. And these days, Rosh Hashanah, when the whole ksiva v'chesima is dependent on your bitachon, your moach, then you have to be extra careful to be more besimcha and not let any sadness get into you when you're davening. Now, what I would say the following: a person knows that he has things during the year that he has to have a kapara for. The thing to do is, before you start the Shmoneh Esrei, a Shmoneh Esrei on your Rosh Hashanah, every day even, you have a full month. Clean yourself out. Work on yourself. And when it comes to the Rosh Hashanah, start off the year with a new slate, with besimcha. Very, very important. This is Rabbi Maggid Mizrich who's telling this. Don't start off the year with sadness. You want to do tshuva? Do it. Have a whole month to do tshuva. Of course, you should be doing tshuva on Rosh Hashanah itself also. Somebody, one of my other shiurim, said to me, you know, we say in the Sana Toikef, mi b'mayim and mi ba'esh. That's not frightening. That's not sad. Who knows what's going to be? So I said to him, what does it say at the end of Nisana Taikif? Oh! I said, what does it say at the end? Utshuva, utzfila, utzedaka, ma'avirin is right akzera.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Ma'avirin, zo akzera, doesn't mean that it changes but the feeling.
No, ma'avirin means it takes it away. It takes it away.
The saroa is the bad. So you don't feel the bad, but you get the punishment.
No, why should you say such a thing?
No. Somebody told me.
I don't know if it's MS. Roya HaGzera means the bad Gzera that was given to you, that you're afraid, it takes it off. It's Mafatalit. So you see, even though you start off and it's not a tight.
Excuse me.
Yes.
If it was that way, it would have been said, Gzera Hara'a. But if it says, Roya HaGzera, means the bad of the Gzera. The Gzera remains.
You have a point. I agree. You have a point. Tzorach Iyun. You have a point. You have to think into it. But the idea, what's the idea? The idea is that, let's say Rabbi Yaakov Meir is asking a good question here. What's his question? His question is that even though was saying that these three things take off the gezerah. It doesn't say gezerah ra'ah, a bad gezerah. It says ro'ah gezerah. Ro'ah gezerah means the bad, let's call it flavor of the gezerah. The bad part of the gezerah. But the gezerah remains. Just the ro'ah of the gezerah is taken off. Mm-hmm. Well, that is also very important. I'll tell you why it's very important. Because everything that Hashem does is always good. Everything Hashem does is always good. It's the way you receive it.
Yeah.
And if you receive Hashem's Zera, knowing that it's Latov and you're going to be happy for it, then it's something else altogether.
Isurim shel ahava, they are still isurim.
No, but if you feel the ahava, then it doesn't bother you. That doesn't bother you. Then you just feel greater attachment to Hashem. You're not sad. You're not sad, and you're not suffering. You're not suffering. You're happy. You're happy. A person has to go through a difficult part of his life. This happens. Things are not working out. The parnos is no good. The sickness and all kinds of things. All kinds of things. Now there are people who become very, very depressed for such a thing. There are other people who say, Hashem loves me. Hashem loves me. And this is a thing that I have to go through. And it's much, much better than having to go through worse things, maybe in Olam HaEmes. I'm getting over here a kapara, and if I take it well, then in Mitzvah Hashem, this will pass, and these difficulties will also improve. So it's a very good point what he said. It doesn't say Gzera Ra, it says Roy HaGzera. And everything depends on the way you take it. And if you take it that it's something good, and it's for you the best thing, Hashem only does good. But sometimes you need some kind of a cleansing, and therefore you'll be happy for it. It's better that it happens now than it happens later or in some worse way. Maybe the way it's happening now is a pidyon. I'm getting only 1% of what it could chas v'shalom be. So you'd be happy for it. So in either way, the point is this, that even though you could be wondering what's going to be, but you have to know that tshuva, tefillah, and tzedakah can certainly remove. So you're showing your bitachon. Again, you're coming to bitachon in Hashem. I have bitachon because it's an emistic tshuva, and tefillah, and tzedakah. They'll take off all the bad connotation. They'll take off all the difficulties. And therefore, it'll be easier. Either it'll be removed altogether, or the negative connotations, the heaviness, will be removed, and therefore I'll be able to live with it in peace. Either way, it's good. But the point is that is the bitachon. Even though you're worried beforehand, mi by mayim, mi by eish, at the end I'm not worried anymore. Why? Because I'm doing emes t'ketshuva, I'm davening like I'm supposed to, and I'm giving tzedakah. Ma'avirin is ro'on ha'gzera. I want to thank you for that observation. That's a very good point. Whoever made that. It's a very good point. Never thought of it. Never thought of it. Very good. Okay. Let's see what we're holding now. All right. We have another 5 minutes. So he says, the Magidim is rich. If chas v'shalom, during davening, a person all of a sudden remembers the averos he did during the year. Remembers. What should you do at that time? He's telling you, you have to be b'simcha. You have to be b'simcha and complete faith that your tshuva, your tefillah, your tzedakah is going to be active and it's going to give you a kapara and a good year. What do? You know you didn't do right during the year. You made a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. Let me just pick out one mistake that everybody can work on. Everybody, myself included. And this is something which we all went through just 2 years ago. It's a simple thing, but everybody can become better in it. What is that? Sicha chulan. Sichas chulin in the Beis HaKnesses. Talking in shul about things other than Torah, Tefillah, and mitzvahs. This is a real disgrace. After we had all the shuls closed all over the world, just 2 years ago, when the Corona thing was going. All the shuls were closed. All the rabbis said, we can't daven in shul. Why? Because we did not respect the shul as it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a place which is devoted totally to Hashem. You bring your child to shul, you want to have kedusha in the shul. You're not allowed to kiss your child in shul. Halacha, in Shulchan Aruch. You can't kiss your child in shul. Why not? I want to quiet the child, I want to make him happy. No, your kisses you have to reserve for Hashem only. When you're in Hashem's home, all of your attention is supposed to be devoted to Him. You can't kiss, you want to kiss your child, take him outside of the shul, not inside the shul. You can't kiss your child in the shul. So I can't do that, and my child needs it to be comforted. So you don't have a problem with a child. You don't have that nisayon of a child. When you're in shul, all of your complete attention is only towards Hashem, towards the Aron Kodesh. How do you come to talk? How are you? I haven't seen you all week long. Let's see what's going on. What's going on? Did you hear about this? How do you do these things in shul? This is something that everybody has to become stronger in. Everyone has to be stronger in. There's no excuse. There's no excuse. We had already a lesson 2 years ago. We had a lesson. So this might come into your mind and say, I have violated this many, many times. Many, many times. So he says, what do you do now on Rosh Hashanah? You're supposed to be b'simcha. But you realize how lax you've been in that one little thing. So he says, Yischazek b'kol kocho. L'shuv el Hashem, on the spot. Make up your mind, this is it. I'm finished talking in shul. No more. Tshuva, aziva sachet, mehayom v'hala. And Kabbalah's omach hashemayim. And bitachon, that Hashem sees what you're saying, and He sees into your heart, and you're really honest and sincere about it, then you can go back to the simcha again. But it requires really a sincere effort. And then you have no worries. This is the Maggid Midrash saying, you have bitachon and simcha for Kodesh Baruch Hu, with the Kodesh Baruch Hu on Rosh Hashanah. That's exactly the way the psak is going to be. Baruch Hagem Hashem Yiftach Hashem v'Haya Hashem Yiftach. Okay. With that, we'll end. Next Sunday, Mitzvah Hashem, we'll continue with this. Same time, same station. Hope to see you again.